And welcome back to the Tasty Tiger. I'm Chef Alexis and
I'm Chef Lauren.
Today we will be showing you how to create garlic knots. So right here we have our pre-made dough. And what are you going to do with it, Lauren?
I'm going to roll it out into 9, elongated spheres almost.
Yeah, so she's essentially going to kind of roll it, after she kneads it a little bit, she's going to roll it out into a snake. So she's putting a little bit of extra flour onto her work surface so the dough doesn't stick while she's kneading. So after she kneads it a little bit, she will separate it off into 9 dough balls. And while you are doing this, you can preheat your oven, like the one we have back here, to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So, also, while you're kneading, or before you knead, you want to spray whatever pan you are using to bake your knots on with any old cooking spray, or you can line it with parchment. So with this garlic knot recipe today, we will also be creating a simple marinara sauce, essentially so you can dip in your garlic knots and just kind of have an all-around rounded appetizer. So Lauren over here is going to start separating her dough into 9 different sections. So our dough is has elasticity, if I can speak. And we're just going to kind of start kneading it out. If you need to, you can always add more flour to your work surface.
Some pieces may be bigger than others are. That's fine.
But you just want to try and get it to a similar size and shape all around. So just going to kind of roll it out into the snake. You're going to slowly kind of go from the center and out and roll as you go, lightly applying pressure as you go. An interesting fact about garlic knots is that pizza parlors with leftover dough didn't really know what to do with them. So one day they just decided to take their leftover dough, roll them into knots, and then that's kind of how garlic knots were made. They brushed them with butter, just kind of like how you did the pizza crust, how they did pizza crusts, and then they just kind of became a hit. So, as garlic knots entail, there's garlic in them, which, who doesn't love garlic? I know I do. A little too much, maybe.
Same here.
But, you know, to each their own. So, once you kind of have it in a rough, rustic snake, you're going to kind of make a loop, and one end is going to go through, and then you're just going to kind of pat it together. That's your garlic knot. Then you're going to set it onto your pan.
The dough may fight you back, so don't worry about it being springy.
Springy and perfect. It's let it bounce back and just kind of keep slowly applying pressure as you go. So while Lauren continues to do those knots, I am going to turn our pan on and start our marinara sauce. So while your pan is preheating, you are going to dice up onion. You can chop up your carrot however you please. And then we're also going to mince 2 cloves of garlic. So the best way to kind of de-shell garlic or get the outside layer or the peel off is you're going to take your knife and you're going to press it on top. You're going to essentially kind of crush it. Then you can peel the skins off. Sometimes you can just cut the top and the end off like this. And then you can also peel it that way. I like crushing it. It just makes it so much easier. So with these 2 cloves of garlic, we are then going to mince it into, I don't know, roughly a 16 millimeter, I don't know. We'll just kind of go until it looks good. So I'm going to slice these in half. I'm going to take out this little inside because that's just going to make it a little bit bitter. Or this little green inside stem. It's just going to kind of make it a little bit bitter. So once we do that, we're gonna mince up our garlic. How are those knots coming over there, Lauren?
They're going well. I think we're using a baking method for cooking.
So in this bread dough that we have pre-made, there is 1.5 cups of white bread flour, 1 teaspoon of instant yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of warm water, which you want to gradually add into your flour, yeast, and salt, and then 2 teaspoons of olive oil, which you're putting in your bowl so that the dough doesn't stick while it's just kind of proofing. And then this dough only needs to be proofed for 1 hour, and it is all ready to go. So, my garlic is pretty much minced. I'm going to add in a little bit of cooking oil, or just kind of any canola oil, into my saucepan right here. Yep, it's really hot. I'm gonna turn the heat down. So to here, I'm gonna add,
Oh my.
wow, smoky.
This recipe should make only about 9 garlic knots if you size them out correctly. Everything okay over there?
We'll see. The onions are a little burnt, but you know, that's flavor.
Alright, have all our garlic knots spaced out. Make sure they are spaced out so they don't like fuse into each other while baking. And we're going to put them back here.
So those garlic knots are gonna go into the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes. So now that I've added my onion in, I'm gonna add in my minced garlic. And about half a large carrot. So just gonna let these mix around a little bit, kind of soften up. So one thing with tomato sauce is that you can flavor it any way you like. You can add rosemary, thyme, Italian seasoning, basil. It can be a chunky sauce, it can be a smooth sauce. So I'm gonna kind of continue cooking these on low. I might add a little bit more oil in.
The time the garlic knots will take to bake is about 10 minutes.
So then to here, I'm gonna add about half a cup to a cup of crushed red tomatoes.
If it sizzles that much, the heat might be on too high.
Yeah. And then from there, we're just gonna add a little bit of Italian seasoning, salt and pepper, all to taste. So you can always add more or less of your particular ingredient. If you like things more garlicky, you can add more garlic powder or minced garlic.
Garlic salt also typically goes well with this.
That is very true. So from here on out, you're pretty much seasoning your sauce to taste, and then you just wanna let it simmer until your garlic knots are done.
Once the sauce reduces, it'll be a little bit thicker than it started off.
Which from then, if you want your sauce to be a little thinner, you can add some water. Usually when made with pasta, you'd add in a bit of your pasta water. But we're just gonna keep this on low and let it simmer until pretty much our garlic knots are done. About halfway through, I think I will taste it and see if anything needs to be adjusted. Lauren, how do we make garlic butter?
You take melted butter. You're going to mix it with a few cloves of garlic, minced that is, and it should be warm, and then you will use a pastry brush, such as here, to apply it to the top of your baked goods.
And we're also gonna mix in a handful of parsley.
An easier way to peel garlic is to crush it beforehand, because it makes it easier to peel off the shells. Also, you may want to remove the sprout with inside because it can add a bitter flavor.
Okay. So you just kind of want to sit and mix your sauce every now and then so that it doesn't sit and burn at the bottom. You're just going to kind of mix it around, kind of agitate it a little bit, just so that it doesn't burn. How's our knots doing back there, Lauren?
They're rising good.
Okay, so while I work on this garlic, why don't you taste the sauce?
Okay.
See if it's missing anything. That is very loud. Or if anything needs to be added per se.
Tastes just about right.
Okay, and while we're waiting, usually you want to clean down your work surface so you can continue moving, and you end off with a clean kitchen other than all of the dishes in your sink. Which, I mean, there's always going to be dishes. So I've got all my garlic. This is about 4 cloves. I'm just going to kind of roughly chop it and then add it into the butter. So we have about 5 minutes left on our knots until we take them out. Then we will brush them with our garlic, butter, and parsley and put them back in for another 5 minutes until they're golden brown.
Depending on the oven, it might take longer to cook your garlic knots.
Yep, each oven's going to be a little different, so you just kind of want to go until they're a nice golden brown or to the golden consistency that you would like. So we're going to put this there. Stir our sauce.
Onto the parsley next.
Yep. So we have about a handful of parsley that we are just going to kind of roughly chop up here.
So like all of this?
Yeah, let's do a nice good handful. So we're going to add about, I don't know, this much small handful. Just gonna fold it up, and then we're gonna.
When you mince
roughly
parsley,
chop
you want it
it.
to be very fine, so that it'll incorporate well with your sauce or your butter.
Can you give the sauce a stir, Lauren?
Yep. It's definitely getting thicker than it was before.
So when you're making your sauce, you can make it to the consistency that you like. I personally like a thicker, chunkier sauce, so I like to leave mine a little thick. Some like to add a little bit of pasta water, or just any kind of water in general to kind of thin it up. So now we'll add in our parsley to our butter. There you go.
Thank you.
And my hands are now green, because that is the power of parsley and or chlorophyll. So we have about 3 to 4 minutes left on our garlic knots. I am going to turn this heat off because it'll continue cooking in the heat of the pan on the burner.
Make sure to scrape the sides of your pan or the sauce will burn and it can make an interesting or gross consistency.
So if you're someone who prefers a smoother sauce, you can blend it up when it's done. Or if you prefer a chunkier sauce, you can just leave it as is. You can even use diced tomatoes instead of crushed tomatoes if you do prefer a chunkier sauce. You can always use a combination of different tomatoes in your sauce, like diced, crushed, and even tomato paste, just to kind of give it a fuller, richer flavor. So I'm going to taste this sauce. Blowing at first, that is very hot, but very good.
Got
So-
the right seasonings?
Oh yeah. So we're gonna wipe down our surface quick. Kind of get rid of this flour residue. So if you clean as you go, it'll make cleanup at the end much, much easier. So sweeping away all the little flour bits. And clean up our cutting board. Sanitize our workstation.
It's currently about 2 minutes left on the garlic knots, and they're rising significantly.
So, with any kind of yeast dough, depending on the number of times that it needs to be proofed, it can get really big or it can stay really small. Your dough consistency can also depend on how much salt is added and when the salt is added, because salt is a hindrance to dough rising. It's essentially like a hindrance to yeast.
Adding too much salt can stop the reaction of yeast and cause your bread not to rise correctly.
So, you usually want to proof your dough at least once, but depending on the recipe that you're following, that may or may not be different.
For most garlic knots, you're not going to want a hard bread or to thicken them too long, but they'll be too thick to eat or they might burn on the edges. Garlic knots are always meant to be soft, not like a crusty garlic bread.
But I mean, garlic bread's amazing. So
That is true. You're not wrong.
it's just kind of going to be your preference. Do you want a much harder, crispier garlic knot, or do you want a softer, light, fluffy garlic knot?
1 minute left. They're not quite golden brown, just about right, I think.
I think we'll call it for now. Take them out and we will brush them with our garlic butter mix. Oh, then they shifted.
So what you're going to do to apply your garlic butter is just take a pastry brush. You can get silicone ones at the store as well. You're just going to cover them and
Generously cover with the butter. Butter and garlic. It's just going to make them so much better.
Typically, when you're having any form of Italian food, you do want a lot of seasoning, and this just helps make the bread better. And it'll go better with your sauce, spaghetti, whatever you're eating them with.
Or if you want, you can just take a spoon.
That works as well. Or use the brush as a spoon.
And then we're just going to cover all of these knots as best as we can with our lovely garlic butter mix. If you're that adventurous, you could try and taste your garlic butter, but we
Some
will not
people
today.
enjoy making a sweet or savory garlic knot with things such as cinnamon.
Ooh, cinnamon knots are really good too.
A pastry
No-
like that can be dunked in like a cinnamon sugar sauce.
Or any icing, honestly.
True. It could go well with ice cream or any other sweet cold food you might make.
Okay.
All right.
So from here, these are going to go back into our oven for about 5 minutes. For 5 minutes or until golden brown. Set.
It's during this stage you want to be careful not to let the garlic knots burn because butter does cook quite fast.
Yeah, so from here, you're just going to want to keep an eye on them. We're going to do another quick little wipe down. Keep our surface nice and tidy.
Even in a recipe as simple as garlic knots, it's important not to cross-contaminate.
And overall, just after cooking a lovely dish, you don't want to have too much cleanup to do afterwards. So garlic knots is kind of one of the many creations that you can make from leftover dough. So depending on what kind of dough you've made, if it's more of a sweet dough like you used for cinnamon rolls, you may make kind of more of a cinnamon sugar knot. And the timer has started because ovens can be tricky and just kind of a pain in the butt sometimes.
Some might think that garlic knots did originate in Italy, like most Italian foods. The truth is that they originated in Brooklyn, around New York, and smaller bakeries.
So, don't know if we mentioned, but in our garlic butter, there is 3 tablespoons of butter, 4 garlic cloves, and a small handful of chopped parsley.
Your favorite Italian food, Alexis?
Definitely pizza. And that's just because we eat spaghetti every single week in my house.
I mean, that's my favorite food, so
I mean, it's not bad, but it gets a little boring after every single week. Once a week.
it is easy to make though, so you can't really blame it for being a simple dish.
True that. So there's about 3 minutes left on our knots. Ooh, it smells good back there. So at this time, if you taste your sauce and you want to adjust any of the seasonings, feel free to do so. Tomato sauce is something very easily customizable to you or your family's kind of flavor profiles or preferences. So we'll just wait until the last couple minutes to throw this sauce in to our little ramekin serving dish. And there's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. So we're gonna take our garlic knots out. We want them to be a little bit more golden brown, but for right now we're just gonna take them off.
You may want a pair of tongs in order to take them off.
Pair of tongs to take them off, or in our case, since they're already cooked, we're gonna put on our food safe gloves, quickly transfer them over to our plate, add our sauce to our ramekin. You may want to use a better spoon, but we are just going to use the spatula. There's our sauce. There are our lovely garlic knots. Put them under this camera here.
Perfect appetizer for any party that you're throwing, or even just
Party, family gathering,
a nice night.
or any night out. So thank you for watching our segment of The Tasty Tiger. Tune back in next time.
Bye!